Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Will is completely devastated when faced with this twin pregnancy. To keep Will and Electra apart, Luna and Remy work together. In order to gain Remy Price's assistance in her scheme to keep Will Spencer and Electra Forrester apart, Luna Nozawa might confess to him. Will Remy become a stalker once more in order to assist Luna in achieving her goals? Luna Nozawa achieved her goals. When Luna got Will intoxicated and had an affair with him, she already had what she desired. Luna is aware that Will wants nothing to do with her and repeatedly declined to have sex with her. But now that she's in Will's bed, Luna needs assistance getting here. Will Remy and Luna work together to reunite with Electra? Will is unaware of Luna's existence. But will look to Sheila Sharp to see who had visited his room that evening. Sheila is obviously acting as Luna's stand-in, even though she is fully aware that she got him intoxicated and had an affair with him. Could Luna's tryst with Will result in her being pregnant? Reminiscent of Luna Nozawa, Remy Price. When Remy saw that Luna was losing it, he went to Sheila. Sheila was informed by Remy that Luna intended to murder Steffi Forrester. Remy might team up with Luna since he believes she would look out for him in the long run. If he assists her in keeping Luna and Will apart, Luna might even guarantee that they will be together. Remy is so desperate to have someone take care of him that he could even abduct Electra if that is what Luna desires. But all Luna is doing is manipulating him to achieve her goals. When Remy realizes that Luna doesn't care for him, he might turn against her. Would Remy turn on Luna if he realized he was being used? To maintain Will Spencer's interest, how far would Luna Nozawa go? Luna is aware that she will return to prison if she is discovered. She isn't taking into account the possibility that Will might also bring charges against her. Will be upset with Luna for deceiving him into sleeping with her. Before someone discovers that Luna is still alive and well in spite of her death certificate, how far will she push this? Electra might discover what transpired between Will and Luna. But since Electra was aware of Will's intoxication at the time of Luna's abuse, she was allowed to remain with him. When her survival is revealed, will Luna flee? After everything her grandma endured to save her, would Luna eventually return to her rightful place in person? Who can give Will the answers he wants? Will is going crazy trying to figure out who might be following him. Will is panicked. Will Spencer is unsure on how to proceed. Electra Forrester says she never came back to the party, but he believes he had sex with her the night before. Will gets more agitated since he knows he betrayed Electra, and she also intends to have sex with him for the first time that same evening. He is currently receiving texts from someone claiming to be his secret admirer. Will had already experienced this with Luna Nozawa, but she is no longer alive, therefore it cannot be her. That's what Will thinks, anyway. Since Electra is the only person he desires, he finds it unbelievable that another female could get so fixated on him. Katie Logan warned her son that telling Electra the truth could destroy their relationship. Her kid having sex with a stranger who posed as someone else didn't seem to worry her too much. Will Sheila act properly? Knowing that he must go back, Will returns to Il Giardino and begins interrogating Sheila Carter. She must have noticed if he was being followed because she spent a lot of the previous evening downstairs to see how things were going. Sheila doesn't want to betray her grandchild, but she also knows exactly what happened to Will. When Sheila found out what Luna had done, she was rather appalled, but she is so happy that Luna is still alive and in her life that she fears destroying their relationship. She also worries about the consequences of Luna returning to prison. The last time she was there, she almost died. Sheila can sense that Will is desperate, too. She finds it difficult to tell the truth, but this is Sheila Carter, and she is undoubtedly skilled at lying and keeping secrets. Luna is fortunate to have a devoted grandmother. Will had prepared for a moment of unadulterated joy, had mentally rehearsed the tears, the crushing embrace he would give his wife, Sarah, the triumphant phone calls to parents who had long ago given up asking about grandchildren. He had braced for the seismic shift of a single new life, an event of such monumental proportions that it required every psychological resource he possessed. But this was not a shift, it was a cataclysm. The cheerful, chirping voice of the ultrasound tech, pointing to not one but two flickering, ghostly peanuts on the grainy black and white screen, uttered the words twins, with the same breezy excitement one might use to announce a 2-for-1 sale, and in that instant, the meticulously constructed future Will had been quietly, fearfully building in his mind for the last 8 weeks, a future with one crib in the corner, one car seat to install, one tiny human to learn how to love without smothering, one college fund to agonize over, shattered into a million unrecognizable pieces, leaving him standing in the ruins of that imagined life, breathless and utterly devastated. It was a devastation that was peculiarly male, a silent, internal collapse that he knew he could never give voice to, for to speak it would be to betray the radiant, if stunned, awe on Sarah's face, to poison her joy with his own profound terror, and so the scream that was building in his throat, a primal thing of pure, unadulterated panic, was forced down and internalized, where it began to eat away at him like acid. His mind, reeling, became a frantic calculator of worst-case scenarios, each calculation more damning than the last. It wasn't just double, it was exponential, a geometric progression of responsibility, fear, and financial ruin. 1 baby was a challenging but familiar equation, 2 was an unsolvable theorem scribbled in a language he did not understand. The math was terrifying: double the diapers, double the formula, double the midnight feedings, double the college tuition, but halved attention, halved sleep, halved resources, halved moments of peace. The modest savings account they had, which he'd nervously calculated could be stretched to cover a single maternity leave and the new expenses of an infant, was now revealed as a pathetic, laughable sum, a drop in the ocean of need that 2 human beings would represent. He saw his career, his hard-won foothold in a precarious industry, evaporating under the weight of double the sick days, double the daycare costs that threatened to eclipse their mortgage, double the reason to never be able to stay late or take a risk. The freedom he had quietly mourned at the news of a single pregnancy, the spontaneous trips, the lazy Saturdays, the life of quiet dinners and cinema, was now not just mourned but given a full ceremonial burial, dead and gone forever, replaced by a vision of perpetual, grinding servitude to a cycle of demand and exhaustion from which there would be no reprieve. He saw himself not as a father, but as a beast of burden, shoulders permanently stooped under the weight of 2 car seats, eyes perpetually hollow from a sleep so chronically interrupted it could no longer even be called sleep. And beneath the cold, hard calculus of finance and logistics lay a deeper, more profound terror, the terror of emotional bankruptcy. Will had doubted, in his most secret heart, his capacity to love one child enough, to be the father his own had not been, present, patient, kind. He had viewed his future fatherhood as a test, a single, focused exam of his character. Now, the test had been changed on him without warning, and the stakes were impossibly high. How could his love, a resource he already considered finite and fragile, possibly stretch to cover 2 completely separate, demanding souls? Would it not snap under the tension? The fear was that he would fail them both, that his attention would be so divided and diluted that each child would receive only a half-hearted version of a father, a man constantly distracted, constantly torn, constantly aware that while he was comforting one, the other was left wanting. He imagined the quiet resentment, the inevitable comparisons, the guilt that would gnaw at him for a lifetime. He saw not a happy, chaotic family portrait, but a bleak diptych of individual needs he could never simultaneously meet. The unique bond he had imagined forging with one son or one daughter was now rendered impossible. Every milestone, every first step, first word, would be shared, not just with siblings, but with him, his experience forever bifurcated, his focus never singular, his wonder always tempered by the desperate need to ensure the other was not left behind. This, more than the money, more than the lost sleep, was the source of the true devastation, the crushing conviction that he was inherently insufficient, that the universe had asked him for a glass of water and he only had a thimbleful to give, and now it had returned with a bucket, demanding he fill it, knowing he would inevitably come up dry. The world outside the ultrasound room became a cruel parody of itself, every sight and sound a taunting reminder of the life sentence that had just been passed. The sight of a tired parent struggling with a single stroller up a flight of stairs now seemed like a vision of luxurious simplicity. He would need a double-wide, a literal and metaphorical obstacle he could never navigate. A commercial for a sedan, spacious enough for one family, felt like a personal insult, they would need a minivan, a vehicle that represented the absolute and total surrender of his identity. The casual complaints from his friends with one child about being tired or broke now struck him as the ignorant whining of the privileged. They didn't know, they couldn't possibly know, what was coming for him. He was marooned on an island of his own dread, separated from the mainland of normal parental anxiety by a vast, uncrossable sea of double everything. He looked at Sarah, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning, incredible joy, and he felt a chasm open between them that he feared might never close. Her "we can do this" was met with his internal "how," her "it's a miracle" with his "it's a trap." He was alone in his devastation, a prisoner behind the glass wall of his own fear, forced to smile and nod while his interior world was swept away by a tidal wave of pure, undiluted panic. The two flickering heartbeats on the screen were not miracles to him in that moment, they were twin verdicts, a biological decree that the life he knew was over, and that the life to come would be a relentless, overwhelming struggle against the inevitable tide of his own inadequacy. It was the absolute annihilation of a future he thought he was getting and the terrifying, blank-page terror of a future he could not begin to comprehend, let alone navigate, and in that sterile, dimly lit room, Will was completely, and utterly, devastated. Luna Nozawa and Remy Price. It was a silence thick with unspoken schemes and the metallic taste of desperation, a far cry from the gilded cages of the Forrester mansion where their destinies were now irrevocably entangled. Luna, a ghost in a silk robe, stood with her back to him, her form illuminated by a single, stark lamp. She was supposed to be a memory, a name on a death certificate, a closed chapter of Spencer family trauma. Yet here she was, very much alive, her survival a testament to her grandmother Sheila Sharp's terrifying brand of love, and her current predicament a result of her own bottomless obsession. She had gotten exactly what she'd wanted, a night, however deceitfully obtained, with Will Spencer. But the intoxicating high of that victory was already fading, replaced by the cold, sobering fear of losing him to Elector Forrester, and the even colder certainty that she could not secure her future alone. She needed an ally, a pawn, someone whose own damaged heart could be leveraged into blind service. And in the unstable, love-starved form of Remy Price, she knew she had found her perfect instrument. Turning slowly, Luna let the robe fall open just enough to be a promise, not an invitation. Her eyes, wide and glistening with manufactured vulnerability, met Remy's haunted gaze. "He doesn't remember me, Remy," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread of sound. "He was so drunk, so pliable. But in the morning, it will be Electra's name on his lips, not mine. It will be her he runs to, her he builds a life with, unless we do something." She emphasized the we, binding him to her cause with a single syllable. Remy, who had once stalked Steffi with a frightening intensity, shifted uncomfortably. He had come to Sheila to warn her of Luna's unraveling state, of her homicidal intentions toward Steffi, yet he found himself now not as a whistleblower, but a potential co-conspirator. His feelings for Luna were a tangled knot of pity, desire, and a profound identification with her status as an outcast. He saw in her wild eyes a reflection of his own loneliness, and when she looked at him, she made him feel seen, a feeling so potent he was willing to ignore the warning bells clanging in his mind. "What are you asking me to do, Luna?" he asked, his voice rough. "You know what happened last time I got fixated on someone." The memory of his actions toward Steffi hung in the air, a specter of his own capacity for darkness. A calculated smile touched Luna's lips. "That was different. That was madness for its own sake. This is for us, Remy. This is about building something." Will is confused, his judgment clouded by Electra's manipulation. "We need to clear the path for him. For me. And when I'm with him, secure and loved, where do you think I'll need a loyal friend? Who do you think I'll trust above all others?" She moved closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The contact was electric for him, a jolt of validation. "Help me keep them apart. Show Electra she doesn't belong in his world. And when this is over, we won't be alone anymore. We'll have each other." The proposition was a siren's song, expertly pitched to exploit Remy's deepest yearning. The promise of belonging, of being cared for by someone as tragically beautiful and dangerously clever as Luna, was a drug more potent than any logic. He could already picture it, himself as Luna's most trusted confidant, the one she turned to when the world was against them. The thought of turning his singular focus toward Electra Forrester wasn't a descent back into stalking. In his mind, it was transformed into a noble mission, a necessary crusade to secure his and Luna's future. The old, familiar compulsions began to stir, but now they wore the mask of purpose. He could follow Electra, learn her routines, her vulnerabilities. He could manufacture reasons for Will to doubt her, to be away from her. He could, if Luna asked him to, even remove her from the equation more directly. A desperate, dark part of him wondered if kidnapping Electra was what Luna truly wanted, the ultimate proof of his devotion. The fact that Luna was transparently using him was a truth his desperation willingly edited out. He chose to see the partnership she offered, not the exploitation she intended. Meanwhile, across town, Will Spencer was grappling with a haze of guilt and fractured memories. The ghost of a presence, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his sheets, a lingering feeling of betrayal he couldn't quite place, it all gnawed at him. Unknowingly, he had turned to the architect of his confusion, Sheila Sharp, who soothed his worries with practiced lies, expertly shielding her granddaughter. Sheila's cover-up was a fortress, but it was one built on the unstable foundation of Luna's escalating recklessness. And Luna, in her single-minded pursuit, was blind to the true precipice on which she stood. Her fear was Electra, it should have been Will. The moment he pieced together the truth, that he was not a willing participant but a victim of a calculated, predatory act, his fury would be a force of nature. Luna's return from the dead would pale in comparison to the scandal of her actions. She risked not only a return to prison but also serious criminal charges from Will himself, a man who would feel profoundly violated. Her entire existence was becoming a high-wire act over a canyon of consequences, and she was pulling Remy onto the wire with her. How far would Luna go? The question hung in the damp air of the safe house. Would she be satisfied with Remy simply whispering doubts in Will's ear? Or would she, driven by a toxic cocktail of obsession and entitlement, push for more drastic measures? Would she demand Electra be scared, humiliated, or worse? And Remy, his heart a exposed nerve, would he follow her into that abyss? The tragic irony was palpable. In her quest to possess Will's love, Luna was replicating the very stalker behavior that had once terrorized her family, with Remy as her weapon. Their alliance was a doomed pact between two broken souls, each seeing in the other a means to an end that would forever remain out of reach. The inevitable collapse would be catastrophic. Remy's realization that he was being used, a tool to be discarded the moment Luna had Will secured, would not bring quiet sadness, it would unleash a torrent of bitter, vengeful rage. The stalker who believed he was finally being seen would, upon understanding he was merely being used, transform into the most dangerous enemy Luna could possibly make. Their team-up to keep Will and Electra apart was not a strategy, it was the lit fuse on a powder keg of betrayal, madness, and violent retribution, threatening to consume them all and finally expose the beautiful, treacherous ghost who thought she could manipulate her way back to life. Will Spencer, every molecule of oxygen was a struggle to inhale, every beat of his own heart a frantic, panicked drum against his ribs that screamed of a betrayal he couldn't remember and a threat he couldn't see. This was more than mere anxiety, this was a full-scale systemic shutdown, a primal fear that had him constantly glancing over his shoulder, his fingers trembling so violently he could barely grip the cool surface of the bar for support. The world had tilted on its axis the moment Electra, his Electra, the only woman who had ever truly seen him, the one he was supposed to be building a future with, looked at him with genuine confusion and then hurt, claiming she had never returned to the party, had never been with him in that passionate, whirlwind encounter he recalled with such visceral, shameful clarity. That memory, once a hazy, alcohol-tinged trophy of his own desirability, had now curdled into the smoking gun of his own undoing, a crime scene of infidelity where he was both the perpetrator and the victim. And the true horror, the element that elevated this from a terrible misunderstanding to a waking nightmare, was the text message burning a hole in his pocket from a number he didn't recognize, signed by a secret admirer, a phrase that now felt less like a flirtation and more like a coroner's tag. He had been here before, trapped in the obsessive, suffocating gaze of Luna Nozawa, but Luna was dead, her chapter closed in a final, tragic period, or so he had to believe, because the alternative, that her ghost was texting him or, worse, that another woman had already slid into that vacant, terrifying role of obsessed admirer, was a cognitive fracture his already overloaded mind could not possibly endure. His mother's advice, delivered with Katie Logan's signature blend of maternal concern and pragmatic cynicism, echoed uselessly in his ears, never tell Electra. But the secret was no longer his alone to keep, it was owned by a phantom, a shadow who had stolen his face and Electra's to orchestrate this violation, and the weight of that unknown was crushing him, making every ringtone a heart attack, every reflection in a window a potential stalker, every moment away from Electra a ticking clock toward the night he was supposed to finally, truly be with her, a night now poisoned by the knowledge that he had already, unforgivably, been unfaithful. Driven by a desperation that overrode all sense and social grace, Will had fled to the one place where the shadows of that night still lingered, the scene of the crime, Il Giardino. And his quest led him inevitably to the one woman who saw everything, who moved through the world's chaos like a silent, all-knowing conductor, Sheila Carter. She stood before him now, a portrait of calm efficiency wiping down the bar, her eyes holding that familiar, unnerving depth of secrets kept and sins forgiven, especially her own. For Will, Sheila was a lighthouse in his churning sea of panic. She was downstairs, she was always watching, her gaze missing nothing, a surveillance system with a pulse and a past more checkered than the restaurant's tablecloths. She had to have seen something, someone, a detail that could crack this awful mystery open. What he couldn't know, what his panic-blind eyes failed to perceive.